Chakshurmilitam Jaina Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jaina Bhutale Swayam Rupagada Mayam Dadati Swabharantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juja Parakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavam Scha Sri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sahagara Raghunatham Vidantam Sajivam Bhagavatam Sapradutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Vishakhanvitam Scha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapachurvischa Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayak Nasta Presho Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Shevaya Bhagavad Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. So today, Thursday, July 10th, 2025, we're celebrating Tristan's haircut. He got rid of his lion's mane, and now he is surrendered Vaishnava. Until it grows out again. So we're reading from the Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order. You're pretty good, by the way. Looking pretty good. Omar looking pretty sweet, too. And his nice saffron. Chapter 29, talks between Narada and King Prachinibari. And this is text number 17. Yes. Yata yata vikriyate Yata yata vikriyate Gunakto vikaroti va Tatato tato padrashtatma Tadvirtir anukaryate Yata yata vikriyate Gunakto vikaroti va Tatato padrashtatma Tadvritir anukaryate Yata yata vikriyate Gunakto vikaroti va Tata tato padrashtatma Tadvritir anukaryate. Please chant.
Yata yata vikriyate
Yata vikriyate Gunakto vikaroti va Tata tato padrashtatma Tadvritir anukaryate Yata vikriyate Gunakto vikaroti va Tatato padrashtatma Tadvritir anukaryate Yata vikriyate Gunakto vikaroti va
upadrashtatma
Tata tato padrashtatma Tadritir anukayate. Anyone else? The synonyms, please repeat. Yata, yata, just as. Vikriyate is agitated. Guna aktaha, associated with the modes of nature. Vikaroti, as it does. Pa, or. Tata, tata. Similarly. Upadrashta, observer. Atma, the soul. Tat, of the intelligence. Brittihi, occupations. Anukaryate, imitates. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Formerly, it was explained that the queen is one's intelligence. That is, speaking in terms of the analogy. While one is awake or asleep, that intelligence creates different situations. Being influenced by contaminated intelligence, the living entity envisions something and simply imitates the actions and reactions of his intelligence. Please repeat. Formerly, it was explained that the queen is one's intelligence. While one is awake or asleep, that intelligence creates different situations. Being influenced by contaminated intelligence, the living entity envisions something. And simply imitates the actions and reactions of his intelligence. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The queen of Puranjana is described herein as intelligence itself. Intelligence acts both in the dream state and in the waking state, but it is contaminated by the three modes of material nature. Since the intelligence is contaminated, the living entity is also contaminated. In the conditioned state, the living entity acts according to his contaminated intelligence. Although he simply remains an observer, he nonetheless acts, being forced by a contaminated intelligence, which in reality is a passive agent. Yata yata vikriyate, gunakto vikaroti va, tata tato padrashtatma, tad vritir anukaryate. Formerly, it was explained that the queen is one's intelligence. While one is awake or asleep, that intelligence creates different situations. Being influenced by contaminated intelligence, the living entity envisions something and simply imitates the actions and reactions of his intelligence. Mukum karoti bachalam pangam lagayati girim jat kripa tamaham bande sigurum dinatarinum. So there is nowhere else other than this Vedic knowledge where you will find anything remotely resembling this paradigm or vision of what is the living entity and how is he situated in the modes of nature, what is this gross body, what are the senses, and what is material, namely the gross body and the senses, and even the mind, intelligence, and false ego, the subtle body, which covers the spirit soul, that is also material. So the intelligence is also material, and it's contaminated, and therefore, Prabhupada says, the living entity is also contaminated. Now, in the 7th chapter, we find where Krishna explains about this, all this subject matter. Bhumir apo nalo vayu kammano bodhirevacha ahankara iti yame mina prakatirashtadha. First, he lists the 5 gross material elements. Bhumir, apo, nalo, vayu, and kam, which is earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Ether is also an element. And it can be thought of as space, or the cosmic atmosphere in which everything is situated. That is, everything is contained within the ether. Hare Krishna, welcome. Give them cushions to sit. So, everything, the whole universe is the atmosphere of ether, and all the other gross material elements are situated within that ether. And sometimes scientists don't exactly understand this, but that's because there's this great ether, this great space between their ears, in which there is nothingness. Because the intelligence is not properly situated to understand these subject matters. To understand properly, it requires some purification. What does this mean, purification? Purification means detachment from gross sense gratification. When one is entangled and ensconced in the activities of sense gratification, one's vision is covered, or one's intelligence is covered, and one is not able to see properly what is what and what is not. But the process of bhakti yoga teaches one to purify one's existence by purifying the senses and refraining from the grosser forms of contamination. One time Srila Prabhupada was asked by some philosophers, what is the deeper meaning of your philosophy? And Prabhupada's answer was, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no meat eating, no gambling. Oh yeah, we know about that. We know you follow those principles. That's all right. But what is actually the deeper meaning? The meaning behind the meaning? Yes, Prabhupada said, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no meat eating, no gambling. So if you want to understand and make some advancement, then some purification is required. Actually, not some purification, a lot of purification. Because for the most part, we are coming from an unpurified state, a contaminated state in which our senses are fully and enthusiastically engaged in sense gratification in very gross ways, especially in modern Western culture. This is the standard of life. And therefore, it is very difficult or almost impossible for people to understand almost anything about the concepts presented in the Vedic literatures like Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. They're just not able to approach that understanding or grasp that subject matter because of the divergence that's created, or the diversion that's created by indulging in wanton sense gratification. So we can see why the Hare Krishna movement is not the most popular movement in the entire world compared to other things, other allurements that may be there. But the Bhagavatam states in the very beginning, Dharma projita kaitavo trapalamo nimatsaranam satam, that this Bhagavatam, Dharma Projita, it kicks out unauthorized so-called religion. When we say so-called religion, we mean that for mostly in the world, what people think of as religion is actually a license for sense gratification in the name of religion. So in the language of Sanskrit, that's called Kaitava Dharma. That's cheating religion, or you could say bogus religion, a word that Prabhupada used that devotees left to use following his footsteps. Bogus religion. So Bhagavatam has nothing to do with such cheating religion. And that cheating religion you see everywhere. Wherever there is some religion, generally there's some contamination or cheating or sense gratification being performed in the name of religion. And then, so we know from the story in Srimad Bhagavatam how Srila Vyasadeva, he had compiled the entire range of the Vedic literature, yet he was feeling incomplete, he was feeling dissatisfied, and he couldn't figure out why. Because he had performed all the proper rituals and sacrifices and done penances and austerities and explained the concepts of Vedic knowledge in proper terms, but he was not feeling it. And therefore, he could understand, well, something is not right, something is wrong, because I should be really feeling pretty good about everything. But I'm not satisfied. And just in that moment, his spiritual master, Narada Muni, came to his place, his cottage in the Himalayas, and he could detect what was wrong with Vyasadeva. And he asked him, well, so why are you morose? And he explained, I've done everything properly that I could think of. I've explained all the proper rituals, and somehow or other, after doing all this fantastic work of compiling the Vedas and disseminating through my disciples, I don't know, I'm feeling a loss, a real lack within my heart. And since you are my spiritual master, please tell me, what is the reason for this? It reminds me of one time when I was a young brahmachari. You could say, he was a young brahmachari? What was that, like 50 million years ago? Back before the Neolithic era. But I was living in the Boston Temple, and we had what we called the dinner program. It was sort of the forerunner of Krishna Cove, you might say, in which we simply invited young people, well, invited everyone, but it was all young people coming to the temple to take prasadam for free, like on a Wednesday night or a Thursday night. And so many young people came. The temple was in a very good neighborhood, situated in the Back Bay neighborhood, it still is there, of Boston. And there are many universities close by. Berklee College of Music was right around the corner. And we had a couple of devotees join from there. And then not far away, you had Harvard and MIT, and just down the street, the temple's on Commonwealth Avenue. You go further down Commonwealth Avenue, you have Boston College, Boston University. Just a block away was, what was the name of that school? I preached in the classroom there, Emerson College. Small boutique liberal arts college, small, expensive, rich kids, pretty smart group for the most part, pretty intelligent. So these are the kind of people that would come to the dinner program to take free prasadam. And they loved the prasadam. We had great cooks, and the prasadam was wonderful. And then the dinner program was just an excuse for us to have the young people come, and then we would preach to them. We'd sit down, take prasadam with them, and talk. So I was talking with one fellow, young man, an intelligent boy, and then he said, I will admit that I feel some lack, some hole in my heart, some unfulfilled aspect of my life, and I don't know what it is. He was feeling his separation from Krishna, or not in the higher stages of separation, but he was feeling a lack of connection to God as an incompleteness in his life. So I appreciate what he was saying, because this is what Vyasadeva was saying to Narada Muni, this exact same thing. And then Narada Muni begins his discourse, and the first thing he does, he chastises Vyasadeva. Sometimes the guru chastises the disciple. You can also get chastised by someone who's not your guru. And maybe the temple commander, maybe the temple president, maybe your husband or wife. But anyway, this is going on. But specifically, when the guru is instructing the disciple, then he may dig into him a little bit. It's kind of like a dope slap, Hey, wake up. So Narada says to Srila Vyasadeva, are you quite satisfied, in a sarcastic way, with identifying the body and mind as objects of self-realization? Vyasadeva was like, whoa. I'm glad he's my guru and he's laying it on the line, because he was seeing that, oh, I have made a mistake. No wonder I'm not feeling it. He said, you have encouraged people, Narada Muni said, in sense gratification in the name of religion. How could you do that? Are you not ashamed? Is that not a misdirection of the actual fact? And so Vyasadeva, he's really getting the heat here from Narada Muni. And then he explained to him that you have failed to properly glorify directly the Supreme Lord. Instead, you have engaged in some indirect and lower level aspects of self-realization, but not perfectly and not complete. And how will anyone be able to understand the truth if you misled them in this way? So Vyasadeva, he was really impacted deeply by these words, especially that you have misdirected people to engage in sense gratification on the pretext of ritualistic religious performances. Oh man! So now I know why I got the blues so bad. I've done wrong. When one acts according to the proper direction of the spiritual master in the Vedas, one feels like one is correctly situated. And if one commits some offense, or if one engages in some sinful activity, then one cannot feel that feeling of completeness. Or to speak of Srila Vyasadeva, speak of any ordinary person. And if a person is very sinful, then their vision is completely covered from anything close to understanding the truth. And so therefore it is said that in relation to the body and the senses, the gross senses, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, that's the gross body. And then the living entity is also covered by a subtle body, which is material, and it's composed of mano, buddhir, eva cha hankara. Mind, mano, buddhir, the intelligence, which we're speaking about in today's verse, and ahankara, the false ego, by which one misidentifies oneself, the pure spirit soul, as being a product of matter. So when one is especially sinful, that soul may die but not be able to take another gross body. He has to remain in the subtle body, which is material, okay? Mind, intelligence, and false ego. Those are material elements, as Krishna has explained. Binir Prakritir Ashtadha, among the 8 Prakriti elements of matter. So, when one is particularly sinful, he may die in some unfortunate way, and then not be able to take another gross body. So that's the real punishment for the soul, to be stuck in a subtle body, but unable to enjoy himself with gross senses. And therefore, persons who are stuck in this ghostly platform, their main business is to create disturbance to those who are embodied, because they're very envious. Oh, you have a body, you can enjoy, and I can't, so therefore they attack. They try to cover over or take over the body of someone who's embodied, especially someone whose consciousness is very weak, and enjoy their body. Some of you may have experienced ghostly attacks. I have, and they always want to try to enjoy through your senses, and like coming in when you're asleep and covering your body and try to divert your dreaming process to suit their needs. I had a cat in my backyard get his feet tangled up. You know, have those kind of fences where the fence goes up like this, and then there's a little. He got his feet caught, both sets of feet, front and back, in that fence, and was hanging there. And I found him days later, deteriorating body. This cat had died an accidental death, hanging from the fence by front and back paws. That was a nasty mess. I cleaned it up, got rid of the body. But there was a ghost. There was a cat ghost was attacking me. I was having these dreams where a cat was like wrapping himself around my leg. I'm like, what the heck? And then I actually gave him a name because it was hard to get rid of him. I named him Catspur. Catspur, the non-friendly ghost. Casper the Friendly Ghost. I had cartoons when I was a kid. This was Catspur, the non-friendly ghost. So I got Kirtan Jagya to come over and do a puja in the backyard to get rid of him. Didn't work. So this was around the time of the gem show. I managed to buy a nice Tibetan carved conch shell from a Tibetan vendor at the gem show. And every night I would blow that conch shell in the backyard and then scatter holy water, which you can call to ordinary water through mantra. All pujaris know this procedure. Gangas cha jamuna chaiva godavari saraswati karmade namanasmana kali. Anyway, I forget the Sanskrit. So by throwing the holy water and blowing the conch shell, then the ghost was repelled and couldn't come in. And then I would sleep with the patra of holy water next to my head, so they can't cross that and come in. And then it was the whole thing, Catspur. Finally he went away. Kirtan Jaggi said, "Did you get rid of the body?" I said, "Yes." The body went into one of the neighbor's trash cans and just far away. So that when one is very sinful, one remains in the subtle body without a gross body and simply creates trouble for others. I don't know, ghosts really like me. They've always liked me. Like sweet boy. Hey, sweet boy. You're a good victim, I can see that. The Prabhupada said that he was ghost proof. There were a couple incidences to illustrate this. One, when he had a factory in Lucknow, and the workers came to him and said, "Babu, there is a ghost." And they were all afraid. So he went through the factory building, chanting Hare Krishna and poking around in the dark corners and chanting Hare Krishna. He said, "Okay, the ghost is gone now." And there's another famous story about Prabhupada getting rid of a ghost at John Lennon's estate that was disturbing the gardener. The gardener couldn't sleep at night, and he was afraid he was going to lose his job because he was unable to work properly during the day because he couldn't sleep at night. There was a ghost. And Prabhupada had the devotees go to he lived in one of the cottages on the property, and have a kirtan. They had a kirtan there for like 5 hours. And then the ghost was gone. And the gardener, he loved Srila Prabhupada, and he was so appreciative of that. Prabhupada had a relationship with that gardener. When he met him, I forget his name, and when Prabhupada met him, at that time Prabhupada was, 73 years old or so. And then Prabhupada said to him, he said, do you still have all your teeth? And the gardener said, no, I have dentures here. And Prabhupada said, I have all my teeth. He showed him his teeth. He did that a couple of times because of his age, but he still had all his teeth. Generally, when people get a certain age, one by one or all at once, the teeth tend to go. So that was Srila Prabhupada's pastime with the gardener, and he would always greet him when he was on his morning walks, or at least if he saw him from a distance, they would wave like that. So the intelligence is a very powerful aspect of the material energy. It is a covering of the real spiritual intelligence, which is the pure spirit soul has intelligence, but it's not one of the material elements. He also has mind, but it's not one of the material elements. These are aspects of the soul's existence. So the material intelligence, sometimes Prabhupada refers to it as the next door neighbor of the soul. So it is very close to the soul and is almost spiritual. But when the intelligence is covered by attachment to sense gratification, then it is contaminated, as described in this verse and purport. And so when the intelligence is thus contaminated, it does not execute its function of assisting the soul in self-realization properly. And the function of intelligence is discrimination. Not like I hate all people with dark skin, not that kind of discrimination, but distinction, making distinction. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that the elements of Krishna consciousness include accepting that which is favorable for Krishna consciousness in one's life and rejecting that which is unfavorable. So the intelligence is able to discriminate, the properly situated spiritual intelligence is able to discriminate between what is proper to be done in Krishna consciousness and what is improper and not to be done. So every devotee has to exercise their intelligence in this way. And there's one story, or it's actually one Leela of Prabhupada, where a devotee had written him a letter, a Mataji in LA, asking him many different questions about details of worship and different things. And point by point, Prabhupada was answering each question in his reply letter. And then he said, in regard to this question, he said, use your common sense. And if you don't have any, consult someone who does. I always found that very amusing. And Krishna consciousness means largely, it's like 80% common sense. But perhaps common sense, we take that for granted. It may be somewhat mislabeled because it appears that common sense is the most uncommon of all the senses. Unfortunately. So a devotee who has a good common sense is always appreciated as a good person to have around the temple. They have good common sense and they can take care of things and they know what to do and they know what not to do, as opposed to the opposite of someone whose common sense is not either very well developed or very refined. But if one practices Krishna consciousness very nicely and very scrutinizingly, understanding the precepts and principles and activities of Krishna consciousness, then one, even if he doesn't have common sense, will develop that common sense. Savarganais tatra simasate suraha. Actually, all the good qualities of the demigods have good common sense. Very good. Look at the bodies they have. They live for thousands and millions of years, and they're very beautiful, and they have a very wonderful existence. Far superior to that existence that we experience here on this earthly plane with our earthly bodies. So, for one who is a devotee of the Supreme Lord, samasate suraha, savarganais, all the good qualities of the demigods, the sura, they become manifest in the body of a devotee, including good common sense. That is a gift from God, and if you pursue Krishna consciousness very assiduously, then that will manifest in your character. And Srila Prabhupada was possessed himself of unlimited good common sense. He could perceive a situation. He could see the motivation of a person. He had extraordinary powers of perception. And therefore, he always gave good advice to his devotees. How to progress in Krishna consciousness. Now, I wanted to read a verse, or a few verses. This actually turns out to be one of the same verses I read last time. But this same subject matter is being covered, since we're talking today about the intelligence. In the second chapter, text 52 states, Yada te mohakalilam buddhir gati tarishyati tada gantasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, which means when you've given up sense gratification and taken properly to Krishna consciousness, and your intelligence has become purified, thus, a wonderful analogy here, passing out of the dense forest of delusion. The whole world is living in the dense forest of delusion, more or less, down to the last man, woman, and child. Then you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. And then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes a very wonderful verse from Srimad Puri, who is a great devotee and acharya in our parampara. And Madhavendra Puri says, Sanja bandana badram astu babato bho snana tubhyam namo bodheva pitarash jatarpana vidhao naham shamaksham vatam ita kwapi nishadya bhadava kulatomasya kangsadvisha smaram smaram agham harami taralam manyikim manina me. Oh, my prayer 3 times a day, all glory to you. O bathing, I offer my obeisances to you. O demigods, O forefathers, please excuse me for my inability to offer you my respects. Now, wherever I sit, I can remember the great descendant of the Yadu dynasty, Krishna, the enemy of Kamsa, and thereby I can free myself from all sinful bondage. I think this is sufficient for me. So he's saying that ritual bathing and offering prayers and respecting the demigods and the forefathers, I'm not really inclined to do all that because I'm simply meditating on Krishna, the descendant of the Yadu dynasty and the killer of Kamsa, Kamsa Dvishaha. And therefore, I think that's enough for me. I will just simply do that. And then Prabhupada says, the Vedic rites and rituals are imperative for neophytes. Comprehending all kinds of prayer 3 times a day, taking a bath early in the morning, offering respects to the forefathers. But when one is fully in Krishna consciousness, and as engaged in his transcendental loving service, one becomes indifferent to all these regular principles because he has already attained perfection. If one can reach the platform of understanding by service to the Supreme Lord Krishna, he no longer has to execute different types of penances and sacrifices, as recommended in the revealed scriptures. And similarly, if one has not understood that the purpose of the Vedas is to reach Krishna, and simply engages instead in rituals and so forth, then he is uselessly wasting time in such engagements. There's actually a verse in the first canto like that, that if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then what is the use of all these rituals and austerities? And if one is not engaged in Krishna consciousness, then what is the use of all these rituals and austerities? But simultaneously, Krishna says in the Gita that these acts of purification, like giving in charity and studying of the scriptures, those activities are not abandoned even by the great souls who are already self-realized. Rather, they continue to perform those activities. And in the next verse, text 53, Krishna tells Arjuna, when your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. So Arjuna's like, yeah, this is cool. So what about a person who is situated in this divine consciousness? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? How does he walk? And then Krishna gives the definitive answer. Of course, the second chapter is the whole philosophy of Bhagavad Gita summarized in short form, and then he goes on to expand that in the subsequent chapters. Text 55, Krishna says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Stita Dhir Muni Uchate. So this is the result of practicing Krishna consciousness, that our intelligence passes out of the dense forest of delusion, which is so much bewilders and bewitches everyone in the world. And I made some notes here. All that is heard and all that is to be heard, that is the noise of contemporary, quote, civilization, unquote, which is based on sense gratification. And based on the illusion of bodily misidentification. The noise of foolish and ignorant people is compared to the braying of the ass. And Prabhupada talks about this braying of the ass who works hard all day for his master. Like the laundryman, the Dobiwala. He piles the ass up high with giant loads of laundry, and takes him to the riverbank where he washes the clothes. Then he piles them back on. Now they're a lot heavier because they're wet. And goes back to his place where he hangs everything to dry in the sun. And then finally, at the end of the day, the ass is put out in his pen and he gets a little grass. And so he's very satisfied to get that grass. And then Prabhupada says he begins to sing poetry. Hee-haw, hee-haw. If you've ever heard the donkeys in India, he's singing great songs of philosophical realization after a hard day's work. And that is the braying of the ass. And that is all the noise of of modern civilization, which is advanced in supplying comforts to the body, but completely blindly asleep to the matters of self-realization. Covered that. Here is a couple of verses in the Gita where it talks about that there is the senses in this gross body, but superior to that is the mind. And superior to the mind is the intelligence. And superior to the intelligence is he, the soul, who is above all that. So, and the point being that if intelligence is attached to sense gratification, then it's covered by Maya and the three modes of nature. But when one becomes detached from sense gratification and becomes attached to Krishna and engages in Krishna's service, then the intelligence regains its original spiritual quality. And so that awakening of the intelligence is a highly desirable aspect of being engaged in Krishna consciousness. And then the intelligence will direct one always in the proper direction of engaging in Krishna service. That's called being trained up in Krishna consciousness. By engaging in devotional service in the association of devotees, then we become trained up to discriminate and accept that which is favorable for the execution of Krishna consciousness and reject that which is unfavorable. You may say, oh, that's cold. But that is the truth. That is the fact. And when one is fully trained up, one is not sentimental about sense gratification. Oh, it's all right, No, one sees, oh, this is foolishness. This is the path of destruction of the eternal soul, to remain entangled in the clutches of sense gratification. More important is to engage oneself fully in the service of Krishna with the body, mind, and words. And there's a nice verse by Rupa Goswami. Iha yasya harer dasye karmana manasa gira nikyalashvapya vashtasu jivan mukta sa uchate. One is actually liberated when, even though living in this world, in this material body, one engages one's karmana manasa gira, one's work, one's working senses, hands, arms, legs, and one's karmana manasa, one's mind, engaged in Krishna, like Maharaj Ambarish. Savai mana Krishna padara vindayo vachamsi vakunta gunar navanani. Karmana manasa gira, one's words, one's power of speech. When all these things are engaged in Krishna service, even though one is living in one of these stool bag material bodies, made of mucus, bile, air, stool, urine, and so many foul substances, one is liberated even while living in this world, if one is fully engaged, karmana manasa gira, by one's work, one's mind attached to Krishna, always engaged in thinking of Krishna. Like Krishna orders in Bhagavad Gita, manmana, think of me, bhavamad bhakto, become my devotee. Then one is jivan mukta sa uchate, one is said to be a liberated person, even while in this material world. Very wonderful verse. We all aspire to live up to that verse by karmana manasa gira. Body, mind, and words, actions, thought, speech, just like Maharaj Ambarish. Savai mana Krishna padara vindaya. He always engaged his mind in thinking of Krishna. Vachamsi vakunta gunar navanane, describing the qualities of the Lord and the spiritual qualities. Vaikunta gunar navanane, that are found in the spiritual world. Vachamsi is speech, like uvacha in Bhagavad Gita, Sri Bhagavan uvacha. Same word, same root. Vachamsi Vaikuntha, Gunarnavana. Kadal Harar Mandira Marjanashi. He engaged his hands in cleansing the temple. He engaged his speech in talking about the pastimes of the Lord. He engaged his body in associating with the devotees of the Lord, offering obeisances to them, touching their lotus feet. In this way, he fully engaged all his senses. So he's the exemplar par excellence of all the 9 processes of devotional service. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma, Nivedanam. Shravanam, hearing, Kirtanam, chanting, Vishnu, about the Lord, Smaranam, Padasevanam, remembering the Lord, serving his lotus feet, offering prayers, becoming the best friend, sacrificing everything for the Lord. He did all of these things. There are different personalities who are the exemplars of each process, like Maharaj Pariksit and Shravanam, hearing about Krishna, and Shukadev Goswami, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Prahlad Maharaj, and always remembering the Lord. So, but Maharaj Ambarish, he did everything. He did all the processes together. Therefore, when Prahlad Maharaj is explaining this verse, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, the next verse he says, Iti pung sarpita Vishnu, bhaktish chain navalakshana, kreti bhagavati adha, tanmanye ditam uttamam. I think this is because Hiranyakashipu said, what's the best thing you learn? What's the best thing you learn in school, son? And then he starts saying, hearing and chanting and remembering Vishnu. Like, what? What are those teachers? Vishnu is our enemy. What are they teaching you in school? And he's chastising the teachers. They say, it wasn't us. We don't know where he's getting this stuff from. Certainly, this is not what we're teaching. We're teaching politics and diplomacy, friends and enemies, power, all the standard Machiavellian principles of demon culture. And so Prahlad said, Tanmanye ditam uttama. I think this is the best of all education, is that one engaged oneself in these 9 processes. Bhaktish chain navalakshana. These 9 processes of bhakti to achieve the perfection of life. Hiranyakashipu was flummoxed by that answer. He did not like it one single bit. And at that moment, he decided, I'm going to have to kill him myself with my sword, if all my other schemes to kill him, which don't seem to be working. All right, so we will stop there and ask for any questions, comments, or realization. First one comes from formerly Thomas Haribol, soon to be another name.
Thank you for class. You started out by saying that we have a spiritual mind and intelligence, and presumably identity, our real identity, and then we have a material mind, intelligence, and false ego. So is the devotional process we're engaged in purifying the material intelligence, or are we reconnecting with that original spiritual intelligence?
Yes.
Because it seems like our
simultaneous.
Says both. Okay.
They're simultaneous.
Okay.
Because actually it is said in one place that chanting Hare Krishna dissolves the subtle body.
Oh, okay.
Because when we leave this gross body, we're not done. The subtle body, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, carry us to our next life to another material body. Except for a very sinful person becomes a ghost and doesn't get a material body. I want to enjoy, I can't enjoy. So this detachment from the gross material senses and the gross subtle body and the reemergence of the pure spirit soul, that is a simultaneously, inconceivably one and different process. It's called a Chincha Beta Beta Tattva. So you dissolve your material attachments, you dissolve your material existence, and in the wake of that dissolution, the spiritual self emerges and manifests, even while still in this body, while still in this world, as we quoted that verse from Rupa Goswami. Srila Prabhupada appeared as if he were an embodied soul, but he wasn't an embodied soul. It's a fully liberated soul, fully engaged in Krishna service. And all his qualities and inconceivable attributes were manifest to the devotees, and they were always astonished by the Krishna consciousness of Srila Prabhupada.
So he wasn't operating with a material intelligence, but with
Not in the slightest. Not in the slightest. He was fully on the spiritual platform, even though appearing in this world. Good question. Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right. Thank you all. Oh, Chandrika. Sorry, didn't see you.
So if a devotee was, obviously a devotee throughout their life, but they still had some sort of disturbance going on in their mind at the time of death, can they have a ghost body when they leave their body?
Can they have a gross body? When
Ghost.
A ghost body?
Yeah, I mean, can they
Shouldn't
come back
be.
as... I know they shouldn't, but can that
Shouldn't be,
still
because
be...
that is a punishment for those who are very sinful. And the devotee is not very sinful. Like
Right.
the story of devotees went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, this devotee stole some money from the temple. And Prabhupada matter-of-factly said, that's not a devotee, that's a thief. So a devotee is not a thief. But perhaps a neophyte devotee has some bad habits of being a thief that will become rectified. But if you are practicing your Krishna consciousness very nicely, then you will not take a ghost body for sure. If you're not fully realized, then you may take another birth, a human birth, to finish up your practice of Krishna consciousness. Or Prabhupada has indicated that Lord Chaitanya, being pleased with the devotional service of those who are helping to spread this movement, will just come and force his way into your mind at the time of death and take you away. Because he's Lord Chaitanya, and that's his business. That's what he does. He's very merciful. So, oh, you're not thinking of me? I got you. I got you. Back to Godhead. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Thanks for that little extra mercy, because I was struggling a little bit. I needed that. All right. Anyone else? Yes.
So how do the laws of our karma affect us at the time of death?
Oh, yes. That's for one who is not on the spiritual path. The activities that one performs in this life directly take one to the next life. As the Christians say, as you sow, so shall ye reap. So according to your actions, you get a certain reaction. And according to your consciousness at the time of death, which you have, that consciousness is the sum total of everything you've done and thought your entire life, then that carries you to a suitable body, which is awarded by the material nature, not by your choice, but forced upon you by the material nature, according to your karma. But if you become fully realized in Krishna consciousness by practice and by intent, then Krishna says, Chaktva deham punar janma. You don't take another birth, but you come to me. How is that? How is that done? Janma karma cha me divyam. Evam yoveti tattva tataha. By understanding, by being absorbed and thinking about Krishna, understanding his janma, his appearance, like we have Janmashtami coming up next month. Janma, karma, his transcendental activities, chame divyam, which are all fully transcendental. When you know these things, tattvataha, factually, in truth, which is not an accident, that's done by practice, by habit, by activity, by association, then you don't take another birth again in this mature world, and you go back to Krishna. That is the goal of the Krishna consciousness movement, for everyone to go back to Krishna. We want to empty out the material world. Okay, Party's over. Everyone go back to Godhead now. Chant Hare Krishna and take prasad, which we will do in just 1 minute. So thank you very much for a very nice question. And we appreciate all your kind attention. And then there's the initiation ceremony taking place at 10 o'clock today. And we're looking forward to that. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki